Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you're listening. Welcome back to AI and the Future of Work. This is your host, Dan Turchin, advisor at Insight Finder, the system of intelligence for IT operations, and CEO of PeopleRain, the AI platform for IT and HR employee service. Thanks again to all of our loyal listeners for helping us turn a passion project for a small group into one of the most downloaded podcasts about the future of work. If you like what we do, please like, comment, and share in your favorite podcast app. All your feedback really helps. Much appreciated. We've had some amazing academics turned entrepreneurs on the podcast, including recently John Whaley from Unify ID. We've learned about the challenges of leaving academia to pursue an entrepreneurial career. I'm always fascinated to hear how the stereotypically slow bureaucratic world of academia can coexist with the high-risk pressure cooker environment of a startup. We've also learned how academia can be fertile ground for incubating ideas and attracting talent. Well, today we get a chance to learn how one academic is building a transcendent brand and a really unique AI-first technology in the highly technical, highly crowded insurtech space. Dr. Zehra Cataltepe, founder and CEO of Tazi.ai, started the company in 2015 and recently graduated from the prestigious Alchemist Accelerator. She is also a professor at the Istanbul Technical University, having received her PhD in computer science from Caltech. Dr. Cataltepe has spent 30 years in and around machine learning, both in industry and academia. She's the owner of 18 patents. She's published more than 100 academic papers and is a 3-time Women Entrepreneur of the Year award winner, as if any more accolades were necessary. Without further ado, Zehra, welcome to the podcast. Why don't you start by sharing a little bit about your background and how you got into this space?
Dan, thank you so much for having me here. It's a pleasure. My background, I'm a computer scientist, academician turned into entrepreneur, but I always had some part of my time in industry all the time, because after getting my PhD, I was a postdoc, worked at a startup, Siemens Corporate Research, and then I turned into an academician. So I consulted in many different verticals, use cases, and how I got into AI. I was always in AI, starting with my bachelor's degree. But how I got into entrepreneurship is because I and my co-founder, Tanju, we realized that people are trying to do AI, but they got it all wrong. So that pushed us into starting Tazi. And at first, I didn't want to actually be an entrepreneur. I was very happy inventing and great PhD students and research projects. But then Tanju just persuaded me that we just had to do this. This was more than writing 100 papers, helping people actually use AI easily. Bringing agile AI for business users has been our goal, and we have succeeded in a lot of places. My end goal is to have my mom to use AI for herself, and my mom is, more than 70 years old, just primary school graduate, and she's actually a farmer. So that's a huge end goal. Right now, we are working with different professionals in different industries. Insurance is our initial market in the US, but we are also working with finance, retail, e-commerce, manufacturing industries for different use cases. So we have a platform that can make AI usable by everyone, even if they are not coders or data scientists. So that's how I got into this space.
I love the vision. It makes sense. I hope that one day your mom is using AI from Tazi. But I want to unpack what you said. That you started the company because everyone got AI all wrong.
Yes.
So what is it that needs to happen to make AI more accessible to non-coders?
So even now, we see that AI is seen in two different ways. One of them is AI models are trained by someone who is very technical, and then those AI models are served to the users. So the models do not change after they are served. Changing the model is a difficult task that needs to be handled by the professionals. And that works if we are just discriminating cats from dogs, but if we are helping with difficult or challenging business conditions, sensor data, customer behavior, all of these change over time. So the update of the model and monitoring of the model becomes a daunting task. And asking the data scientists, first of all, to serve the right model, even from the beginning, to the actual users without really understanding what is business, and then expecting the business to accept a rigid model that will not change according to their business processes and the market is just not acceptable. So that's what's wrong. So thinking that AI models can be trained and then deployed and they do not need to change often is totally wrong. AI models need to be, first of all, monitorable by everyone who uses them, who needs them. They need to be understandable and understandable without being a data scientist, because when you say understandable AI, you should look at the presentations. I mean, you have to have a PhD to understand what they mean by understandable AI. And finally, the models need to be updatable by business people who are responsible, who have a certain responsibility, and we should not need them to learn how to code in Python or how to really understand the AI model's workings. So this is like asking people, telling people you can drive a car, but you have to be a mechanical engineer to drive a car. Otherwise, I'm not allowing to drive. Why? Because this car might break down at any minute. So there is this robustness of AI systems, ability to cope with change that is not in the existing systems. So that's what it is wrong. I don't know if I jumped around too many different topics, but it's really being able to continuously update it, being continuously monitorable by everyone involved, and being updatable by the relevant people are key components. If we had these, none of the Black Mirror stories would happen. Actually, and one of my dreams is to rewrite those stories with this kind of AI.
That's equally as ambitious as teaching your mother, who's a farmer, to use
AI. For Black Mirror, I need definitely help. For my mom, yes.
Now you're talking to a technical audience, and I've got to drill down a little bit further. When we talk about automating model management by non-developers or non-AI practitioners, there's a lot of complexity there. There's algorithm selection, and there's hyperparameter tuning, and there's feature selection and drift detection. I'll admit that even being in the space, it feels like a very hard technical problem to devolve all of the control over managing the life cycle of an AI model down to, call it a finger quote, citizen developer. Is that something that Tazi is attempting to do?
I'm not saying all. I'm saying the data scientist may need to be involved, but others need to be involved more, and they need to be involved even more than the data scientist. So the topics that you are talking about, they are all valid, but right now we are coping with them by writing code, writing Python scripts, or using very specialized software So that's not the way to go. We should really address each of those problems in terms of the business processes. What does really drift mean for a retail company trying to sell a certain product, for example? So we need reformulation and reformulation of the problems and how we solve them as well.
In this show, we talk a lot about the ethics of AI and specifically the quality and the nature of the data that's being used to train these models. Let's say we do have non-developers involved in the model management process. Does it make the problem of eliminating bias in training data harder or easier?
Your models and your data is only as ethical as the people who use them. So the tools, our tool, for example, gives you access so that you can detect if your data is biased, and you can detect if your models are biased. And I just want to open a parenthesis there. Being biased is addressable only if you are specific enough. For example, saying that people who have lower income have less credit risk score is a general problem known by everybody. But when you are able to define it in a more specific way, then you can actually come up with solutions as well. And those biases can be unearthed by really going into micro-segmentations, going to smaller granularity so that you are able to detect where bias is exactly. You may not be able to find the cause of it, but you may be able to figure out where bias is happening more than the other places. And I don't think we are going to change all the inequalities that we are in right now by providing understandable AI. But we are going to be able to show people exactly how it is happening. And then we will be able to take actions to prevent bias. So the bias problem is there, but it's not just about bias. Theoretically speaking, we could actually change the world if we understood how biases are happening. So, for example, we might identify some core differences between people who are at risk and who are not at risk in terms of auto insurance claims, for example. Then that single difference might point out to some policies that will make the life easier for the people with more risk, and they may be able to change their lives, and at least they will realize what their risks are. So I don't think the explainable AI, understandable AI, and unearthing those biases is the solution, but it's a very important step towards a solution. Because if we understand the problems better, and if everybody understands them, not the data scientists, but the people who are working with those models and people who can take actions, then we are going to really jump a long way towards a better society, I think.
Practicing responsible AI, to me, starts with answering one important question. And I'd be curious to get your perspective on this based on Tazi and your first vertical insurance. What could go wrong?
A number of things. AI models, for example, could be overfitting your data. So that's a huge problem. Overfitting means you work with a model on a training set, and you are confident that your model is just great. And then when you deploy it in a real life scenario, you realize that your model actually is not performing so well. So overfitting, I think, is more of a problem than everybody realizes. and they understand it at deployment. That's why so many models are not deployed. Another problem is changes in data. People think that data processes have been cleaned up. They have things that control how the data is being pushed from one place to another. However, those mechanisms can go wrong at any time. So it is important to have robust AI systems that can still continue operating even when some of the data is not available, or it is actually available but wrong. So having continuous checks and remedies on the input streams is also important. Overfitting and in general having robust models that work and under different circumstances is very important. And finally, it's important to tie up the outputs of AI models. What happens when AI says something? That's completely overlooked. And I understand it more and more as we deploy solutions and results are observed by people and actions are taken. So, for example, for insurance customer retention, for example, or in general customer retention, you are trying to not lose your customers, and then you might just offer some incentive to keep your customer, and then you might realize that yes, you are keeping your customer, but your premiums are all wrong. That customer comes to you because you have much lower premiums than your competitors, but you have priced the risk wrong. So then you realize, hey, I need to actually estimate the risk much more accurately than I am doing right now. So that's another AI model. It is important to, first of all, understand what your actions result in when you take actions with AI. And it's also important to be able to make those actions better. You shouldn't say, oh, I have reduced my customer churn. However, all I'm getting are very risky customers which I'm not able to price right. So AI is not working for me. Instead of that, thinking of a long-term strategy where your people in your company are able to not just understand the AI model that exists, but also create new ones as new needs happen, I think is a key issue. So we are looking at lots and lots of upskilling people that can create a basic model when they need it. And then once they see that model is working all right, they might ask the data scientists to make it better. But when you have a huge need, you should be able to resolve that need as soon as possible without waiting for consultants, without waiting for your data science teams, giving you some time, 3 months or 6 months down the road. You need to get things done now and then. So in general, upskilling is really the solution for what can go wrong, because so many things can go wrong. We don't know yet what can go wrong because we haven't yet installed so many systems in so many different places. And when they are installed, it's important that there are responsible and able people who look at them and say, this is wrong, and this is the strategy to resolve that wrong. And finally, I think it's very important to have backups of things, backups of models, backups of decisions, and having the ability of easy deployment. If this goes wrong, if my current model is wrong, I should just be able to deploy a previously working model immediately. Because when we put the AI models in working systems, if suddenly people's requests for a treatment are not being approved by the insurance company, if suddenly things are in crucial systems are not working because AI is not working, is unacceptable. So you have to always have backup systems. And those backup systems can be the other AI systems that worked previously, rule-based systems, and humans. So you have to make sure that all of them are in place. So what may go wrong? Everything. Something will go wrong. But when that thing goes wrong, you should have the ability to make it right and go into a different level than where you have been before.
I know that responsible AI is one of the core principles for Tazi. What is it that you as a CEO and a technology leader do to reiterate or enforce that cultural value within the company? And maybe start by telling us, what's your definition of responsible AI?
Thank you. Responsible for me has two components. No, actually three components. One of them is being continuously updated. People overcome that. If you are rigid as an AI system, you cannot be responsible, because while the world changes, if you are not able to change, then you are not going to be performing well. So being continuously updatable is part of being responsible. The second part is, and everybody thinks about that, being understandable by being democratized, being understandable and usable by a lot of people as opposed to a minority of people, I think is part of being responsible. And that brings the ethical parts, that brings being humane part, because as I said, AI is only as responsible as the people who use it. Another part is the environment. This is something that people are overlooking right now. I keep hearing companies whose electricity costs 10% or cloud costs 10% are because of training of AI systems. Right now, people think, I'm using electricity, and we think that electricity is clean energy, which is not. I mean, something is being used to create that energy. So we think that I have my TPUs, GPUs, I have all the computational power. So I'm just going to train the most complex AI systems. You should go back and think, first of all, do you need that complexity or not? Because I talked about overfitting. Sometimes we just try to optimize for the data at hand, and we just overfitted our data, wasted lots of resources. So I think a very important part of being responsible is being resource efficient. And we have a white paper. We have shown that with continuous learning, you can be just using 100th of the resources and still come up with very similar accuracy. And in making AI responsible, in making models simpler, I find human input to those models to be very crucial, because the domain expert is able to just take, with one look, they are able to say, oh, you are using this, and it's actually useless. This should not be in the model. That makes the model less complex. They can look at the explanations and say, this is too overfitting, too complex model. I don't need that complexity. So putting continuous learning technology and ability of human to have a role in what the model should be like makes AI responsible environmentally also. And we really need to keep thinking about this before we go through the same thing we went with cars. So lots of people will be using AI. And when they use AI, we need to make sure that it is responsible. There is just a Turkish saying, I love that. It is my mom said it, maybe it is a Turkish saying or not. She keeps saying, even the snake eats the earth one bite at a time. So the snake doesn't say, oh, I'm in this huge earth, I'll just keep eating. So we should really think about, do I need to have such a huge footprint with my AI? Or could I just have it simpler? And being simpler, by the way, has a lot of consequences in terms of being understandability and actionability as well.
I asked that question a lot of times, and I've never heard the complexity of the AI model considered in terms of the environmental footprint of the model. It's a nice way to think about the need to reduce the complexity, and also as we were talking about making it manageable by mere mortals, it also is important to not overcomplicate it.
Mere mortals without TPUs.
Right.
So when you are able to do that, you open so many doors. Initially we were able to use a Raspberry Pi. Tazi is just a fan of Linux and all those open source operating systems, and just for fun, he was like, yes, this works on a Raspberry Pi.
Wow. So it's definitely no TPU needed.
Yes, yeah. So again, it's all about what do you really need, and what are you going to do with that AI? There is one last thing. I forgot to mention this. This came up during a conversation with an insurance professional. He said that, with the telematics devices, now we are able to say, oh, you are braking hard, so maybe you are a risky person. And then he said, hey, maybe I need to brake hard because to avoid an accident, I need to brake hard. So if at the back of my mind, I'm thinking, oh, my insurance company will increase my premiums because if I brake hard, I'll be deemed a riskier person. Then you actually increase the risk of a person because you told that person, if you brake hard, you're a risky person. So these are this is just a one example. I mean, there are so many examples that we need to think about. When we take actions with the machine learning models, not just how we take those actions, but how we communicate those actions to the users, so that we are not going to be affecting daily lives in a negative way, is another part of being responsible, I think. So this is about installing systems and then keep monitoring them to find out how we changed the daily lives of our users.
So that's a good example of where data could be used to make automated decisions that might help calculate the risk score, which would go into calculating the premium in the insurance space. What are some examples of decisions that might be made to determine my premium as a consumer that you think should not be trusted to AI?
That's a difficult question. So first of all, determining premiums is a very difficult and a very regulated task. First of all, I think everybody should know that. So insurance companies determine the risk, the frequency and severity of risk for segments of customers, and then they had to show to the authorities that the risk is this much, the costs are this much for this segment, so that's why I'm pricing this segment in this way. So I'm not making tons of money from these people. This is their risk, and I have my costs as an insurance company. That's how I should be pricing this. So this was something that I didn't know before I entered the insurance company industry. So I just want to let you know that. And those that pricing doesn't change very often because it's difficult to change pricing. Because there is whole months of documenting models and then passing them by the authorities and then implementing them. So what should not be used to determine your risk, an example is your credit risk score. So credit risk score determines your accident risk. And authorities in certain states now banning the use of credit risk score in pricing, in rate making. While this looks like a great move to make the models more responsible, right? So lower income people will not be punished for not making a lot of income because the credit risk score is not good somehow maybe. On the other hand, there's a deeper problem. Just banning the use of that credit risk score does not mean that your models are not deciding based on credit risk score. There might be correlated other variables that determine the credit risk score. You are not using credit risk score, but you are still using credit risk score in essence. So for that, our solution is we decided to let anyone bring their model, and we can create explanations for those models. We can tell you how the model is deciding. And you might say, I don't have credit risk score in my model, but then we can show you that the credit risk score of this person is still a determining factor in how your model decides. You are not using credit risk score, but you are using some other variable that determines credit risk score. I just, again, I just learned so much from these customers' conversations. Somebody had a great idea. She said, why do we worry about those variables correlated with credit risk score? Maybe there are other variables out there that are not related to this, but still affect my risk. And it's not going to be about discriminating people or being biased. It will be just a determination of my risk, and maybe it will be even helpful for me as a person. So I mean, telematics is a good move in that direction. Like how you use the car at certain times tell a lot about the risk of an accident. But it is still work in progress. I mean, because there are lots of obstacles that need to be handled, both in terms of the long-term benefits of users and also the insurance companies. So it's still not a story that has settled down. But do you have any, Dan, do you have any anything that comes to your mind? Because, that's a very interesting question.
I like the idea that there are unrelated variables that have a high correlation with risk. And I would be, as a data scientist, I'd be interested to look at data related to a variety of things before drawing conclusions. For example, perhaps there's a correlation with your military history, or with the number of kids you have, or with the weather in your locale, or perhaps the gas mileage of your car. I could speculate, right? You could build a narrative around any one of those, and again, from the perspective of the data science, I would love to go through an exercise to understand if any of those or other variables would be better predictors than maybe what we're using.
Yes. Privacy concerns immediately kick in there. So one idea we have is instead of sharing your data, what if you were able to share your models? Like, think of them as your APIs to the world, right? So people can't have access to my exact driving pattern, but I have my local model. That Raspberry Pi story then comes even more relevant. I have my own model. It's my model. Okay, nobody knows about my model. Not my insurance company. Not government, not school. Nobody. I know about my model. I know what goes into my model. I know how is my model trained, and my model serves me as a person, as opposed to other entities. And I can control who questions my model, and I can control the answers of my model. But my model is being trained in the appropriate way. So there are, again, this is very futuristic. Okay, so this is just like science fiction. But I don't think we are so far away from it, especially, as these AI predictions or determining our state or predictions of our state and announcing it to other parties around us become more and more relevant. we want to be able to control those models as opposed to other third parties. But this is very, very, really, really like science fiction. But is it doable? Yes, it is doable. But we want to make sure that this is as easy as using a car. Right now cars are vehicles that live with us, and they are all the time with us, and we use them, but we don't control how they are built for us. I'm talking about having a control over the predictive models for you, and not giving your data out, but giving those models outputs out, so that people don't have access to everything about you. Because sometimes things are so correlated, people can predict things about you that you don't want to be predicted.
So in that science fiction world, where I like the way you phrase that, we bring our models, but not our data, and they're comprehensive. Talk me through that bringing it back below the level of science fiction in a world where Tazi is wildly successful, and this vision of yours that you just articulated comes to fruition. What will you look back on as your your proudest accomplishment at Tazi, if the world looks like that?
I think the proudest accomplishment is enabling people. Right now, I don't know exactly where this AI will be used. I have no idea, because people are so clever. Just, a person who is not a data scientist, understanding how an AI model can work better is a huge accomplishment, and we are seeing it every day now. Non-data scientists bring in data, they bring in feature, and they bring in their expertise when they see interactivity and acceptance from the AI models. When they realize that it's not the data scientist's model, but their model, they have control over it, they can make it better. When they see that, suddenly AI models become servers, like servants of people, apprentices of people, not things govern or control people. So that commoditization, that's a word I have a difficulty.
Easy for you to say. Commoditization.
Commoditization of AI. That's more difficult than Cataltepe. So commoditization of AI is, I think, one of the most key components. When we look back, I want to be, me and my co-founder and all people at Tazi, I want to be remembered as a person who made AI accessible, finally. We thought it was so difficult, but it is not. So we can actually use these things after all, and they are not really as harmful as we thought. So that, I think, is going to be like one of the breakthroughs that we are going to be proud of. I'm really excited about that footprint. Whether we look the other way or not, environmental problems are here, and they are for everybody. Whether you are in Texas or in Oregon or in Turkey, I'm just so sad about the fires happening there right now. And remember last year and the year before that, California fires. It was just very difficult, and unfortunately, we are going to see more and more of that. So we have to really take care of the environment, and we have to just not see it as a resource that we can consume at any way and any rate we want. So the footprint, reducing the footprint, also I think will be a major contribution that we are going to be making.
It's a wonderful vision, and I, as well as I hope all of humanity, are rooting for Tazi to be wildly successful. Now, it feels like we're just getting started. We went way over time and way off script, but I hope that you'd be willing to come back and have another version of this conversation, because there's so much more that we have to discuss still.
Yes, I mean, I think I got into too much the environmental stuff, but just to maybe wrap up, then. We are right now being actively used by insurance companies to understand their customers better and increase their retention rates. And understanding your customer is at the end really becomes a great tool in serving your customers. So I'm very happy to be starting with insurance and allowing helping insurance companies to ask questions and answer them in ways that they have never done before. And also, I'm very excited to be helping manufacturers, retail companies, e-commerce companies, again, using less and being more efficient so that they can survive in a competitive world. So this is where we are right now, and where I want to go at the end is that world. But it's one step at a time.
Beautiful. I'm inspired. I would encourage everyone listening, go to Tazi, Tazi.ai, and you can learn more about the amazing work that Zehra and her team are doing. Again, Zehra, thank you so much for being here. This is very enjoyable, and I look forward to continuing the discussion another time.
Thank you so much, Dan. This was great brainstorming. Thank you.
Well, this is Dan Turchin, your host of AI and the Future of Work, signing off for this week, but back next week with another fascinating guest.